firsthand. He is helping to lead the charge demanding accountability from the Secret Service. Nick.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman and Leader Scalise, Whip Emmer, and Speaker Johnson. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today. The U.S. Secret Service has a zero-fail mission, and they failed massively to protect President Trump and rally-goers on July 13th. Corey Comparatore, a firefighter and a father, he lost his life that day because of that failure. And President Trump is only here by the grace of God. There must be accountability from the U.S. Secret Service for this tragedy. But during yesterday's Oversight Committee hearing, Director Cheatle did nothing but deflect and hide behind the FBI investigation. She's answered more questions from the media than she's answered from members of Congress. She did the impossible yesterday. She united the Oversight Committee on both sides of the aisle because members on both sides called for her resignation in the hearing culminated in a letter from Chairman Comer and Ranking Member Raskin calling for that resignation. I was compelled on Sunday when I woke up to, instead of flying to Washington, to drive so I could stop in Butler, Pennsylvania and see this site with my own two eyes. To see the rooftop of the AGR building where the killer was staged, it is literally a chip shot 9-iron from the podium. Security 101 would have put those buildings within the secure perimeter. The Secret Service did not do its job. It did not have a culture of communication with local law enforcement. And in fact, it's been very disheartening to see sources within the Secret Service try to throw local law enforcement under the bus. But we got nothing out of Kim Cheatle yesterday. All she did was stonewall and hide behind an FBI investigation that won't be complete for 60 days. It is clear that we have gross incompetence from the Secret Service. The one thing that we did learn yesterday is not only has Director Cheatle not even visited Butler herself, and it just blows my mind that she would not have arrived there by dark that day, but the fact that no one has been reprimanded, suspended, or put on a desk job. I mean, this is absolutely embarrassing. I was so compelled during this hearing that I introduced a resolution calling for the president to terminate Kimberly Cheatle because she will not do the honorable thing and resign. Director Cheatle is not fit to lead his agency. Members of both parties overwhelmingly have called for a resignation, and she does need to be fired immediately when the president surfaces if we're going to restore any sort of public trust in the U.S. Secret Service. We are in the most contentious presidential election of our lifetimes. There's 104 days left in it, and the protectees deserve a Secret Service prepared to do their mission, their single job, which is to protect the current and future leaders of our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. And following up on that, after yesterday's hearing, there is one thing that Democrats and Republicans agree on. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle needs to go. She refused to answer questions directly and proved that she is either unable or unwilling to do her job. No matter what your politics, we can all agree that what happened on July 13th was a complete security failure. President Trump was nearly assassinated. A former fire chief lost his life protecting his family, and 2 others were critically injured. Yet Director Cheatle maintains that the resources on site that day were sufficient. Unacceptable. Director Cheatle is ultimately responsible for the security plan that allowed an assassin to open fire on President Trump and his supporters. The agents on the ground in Butler, Pennsylvania acted with courage, and we commend them for returning President Trump to safety. However, they should have never been in that position to start with. If Director Cheatle won't resign, then Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or whoever, by the way, is in charge right now in the White House needs to fire. If they refuse, it's yet another stain on the Biden-Harris administration's record. And on the note of this administration's record, I want to be clear about something. Kamala Harris co-owns the failures of the last 3.5 years, which include double-digit inflation, a historic border crisis, total chaos overseas, and the cover-up of Joe Biden's failing cognitive state. Look, it doesn't matter if it's Biden or Harris. In fact, it's even worse if it's Harris. Americans can't afford another 4 years of weak leadership and policy failures that have become the cornerstone of the Harris-Biden administration. And they know that Americans know that Harris has been part of it every step of the way. With that, I turn it over to our majority leader, Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Whip. Well, the Democrat Party proved last week that they have absolutely no respect for their own voters. They literally jettisoned throughout the votes of 14 million Democrats who went to the polls to select Joe Biden as their nominee and went behind closed doors where party bosses pulled the will of their voters and replaced Joe Biden with Kamala Harris. Now, it begs the question, let's look at Kamala Harris's record as vice president. She's still the sitting vice president, but she's also been the architect of many of President Biden's worst failures, not the least of which is her main responsibility that she's been given in 3.5 years, that is the job of border czar. When President Biden tapped her to be the border czar, it took her months to even get out to the border. She said many times that the border is secure. Everybody in America knows that's a lie. In fact, it's the largest crisis in America, affecting every community throughout this country, with drugs, with opioids that are killing about 150 Americans every day, bringing in criminals to every community in America. And Kamala Harris has been responsible for this epic failure. In fact, she's called for open borders. What else has she called for? Good luck if she goes to Pennsylvania and talks about her energy policies where she wants to ban fracking. She has been against American energy her whole career, while allowing foreign countries like Russia and Iran to put billions of dollars into their pockets, selling their energy around the world, while crushing American energy and the jobs that go with it here at home. We all know what Kamala Harris did raising money for the Minnesota Freedom Fund when radicals were out protesting and ultimately getting arrested, attacking cops, doing other things. She's shown disdain over and over again, saying we need to rethink policing, embracing the defund police movement. That's Kamala Harris's record. She is far to the left of Joe Biden, and we know the failures of the Biden-Harris administration all too well. That's going to be a problem they're going to continue to have. They hold nobody accountable for their failures, and unfortunately the American people are the ones who pay the price. We laid out a really strong alternative at our convention in Milwaukee. I was proud to be there with our other leaders here, and what we saw is an incredibly unified Republican Party with a clear and focused agenda. President Trump laid it out himself, as did all the other speakers, talking about what we will do to help those families who are struggling under the weight of this radical Biden-Harris administration that's led to record inflation, higher costs at the grocery store, at the gas station, discord all around the world. Kamala Harris couldn't even find the time to go greet Prime Minister Netanyahu yesterday when he arrived in the United States. And in fact, Vice President Harris is boycotting tomorrow's speech by Prime Minister Netanyahu. That's disgraceful. Why will she not come and show support for our greatest ally in the Middle East while they're at war from terrorist organizations funded by Iran? These are the kind of questions that they're going to have to answer. And finally, when you watched that hearing yesterday with Secret Service Director Cheatle, I think everybody in America knows she's not up to the job. And it's an important job. It's a job where the main mission is to protect presidents and former presidents in the United States with a zero-fail mission, as Mr. Langworthy talked about. And not only did she fail, but she actually lied to us and the American people multiple times just in the last 10 days. We had been hearing for months that President Trump's team was denied additional Secret Service protection that they had asked for. And what did we hear from the Secret Service director? A vehement pushback. They said, no, that's not true. For days they said it wasn't true. They didn't just ignore what we were saying. They actually said it wasn't true. And then the day before, Director Cheatle comes before the Oversight Committee where she has to testify at the threat of perjury. They all of a sudden leak out the truth. And that is that, yes, in fact, the Secret Service Director Cheatle did deny the Trump team additional Secret Service protection. Why did she lie to the American people and members of Congress for about a week about such an important detail. She talked about the inability to protect the roof where the shooter positioned himself. She said it was too high of a pitch. And then yesterday you had Carlos Jimenez, a colleague of ours, 70 years old, on the roof just walking around saying, look at this. This is not difficult to maneuver. She lied about that, too. She has no credibility to the point where literally Republicans and Democrats are united calling on her to step down. This is not an entitlement position she has. She works for the American people, and she failed in her mission. Joe Biden needs to remove her if she doesn't have the self-respect to step down. And we're going to continue to push for that as well. Now I'd like to bring up the man who's leading our charge, and that is Speaker Mike Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Grateful to see all of you. The Republican Party is unified and energized after our convention. We're excited about this campaign because we have the answers to all the great challenges facing the country. And you've seen the momentum behind the Trump and Vance ticket and all of our party being excited to get out there and have this debate. This election will be about policies and not personalities, and we are delighted to line up the record of President Trump against the Biden-Harris record. It's very clear where we're going. So we're in unprecedented, very challenging times as a country because of the weak leadership out of the White House. And at this unprecedented moment, we have to be clear about exactly what happened here in the last 24 hours or so. Just over, or 48 hours ago, just over 100 days before an election, Democrat Party bosses forced Joe Biden off the ballot. They invalidated the votes of more than 14 million Americans who went through the small d democratic process and chose their nominee for president. The self-proclaimed party of democracy can't claim to be that anymore because they just steamrolled democracy and made a decision in a back room. And one thing is clear. If Joe Biden is not fit to run for president, he is not fit to run the country. We're stating the obvious. We're stating what everybody is seeing with their own eyes. And it's a hard truth, but it's one that the country has to face. Right now, we're facing altogether increased threats around the globe because of this weakness. We're facing threats right here at home, and we're sending the world a dangerous message. America needs strong, resolute leadership at this perilous moment. Joe Biden is not providing that. Kamala Harris is incapable of providing that, and we need to get November 5 here as quickly as possible. I would say this, and I've hastened to remind our enemies around the world, our adversaries around the world, that regardless of the chaos surrounding this White House, I want our adversaries to be reminded that the United States Congress, the United States military, and the American people are fully prepared and committed to defend our interests both at home and abroad, and you should not mistake the drama surrounding Joe Biden as any sign of weakness or any moment of opportunity for you. Our country deserves better. I believe we'll get that after November 5th, and as I said, it can't happen soon enough. Regarding the Secret Service failures, we did have that hearing yesterday. It was outrageous and inexcusable what happened Saturday last, and I think Director Cheatle needs to go. I called for her resignation within days of the event, and when it became clear that she would not resign on her own, I called on President Biden to fire her. The buck should stop at the White House, and accountability begins at the top. I met with Director Cheatle before the oversight hearing yesterday morning in the back library, and I told her this is not personal, but this is serious business, and she needs to step aside. Since the evening of the shooting, I and all of our colleagues, all the Republicans and Democrats as well, have been demanding the answers, and they have not been forthcoming. The oversight hearing was a bust because she was unable or unwilling to provide the answers that the American people need. Although she says she's taking full responsibility, quote unquote, we know that that's clearly not true. Because of this, it necessitates a specific precision, precise and quick action by the Congress. And so while we have a number of committees of jurisdiction who have already done great work on this, they leapt right into action as you would expect they would do. I think the moment calls for something unique and different. We need to move quickly. We need to get the answers that the American people deserve. And so we are establishing a special task force in the House that will be bipartisan. It'll be composed of 7 Republicans, 6 Democrats. The composition of the committee will be persons who have expertise in the areas in question and a lot of insight about that. We'll give the list of the composition of the committee, the members, by the end of this week. But they'll have three primary responsibilities. We have to get the answers, of course, about what happened. We need to make sure that accountability is ensured to the American people, and then we need to prevent anything like this from ever happening again. The committee will have subpoena authority. They will begin immediately. A final report will be due from the committee no later than December 13th, but we could probably expect that there will be interim reports along the way. We have a finite set of facts and circumstances here with regard to the event last Saturday, but there are deeper problems, obviously, in the Secret Service, and I think this task force will be the way for us to get to the bottom of that. Finally, it's been mentioned I'm happy to welcome Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for what will be his fourth address to a joint session of Congress. He will set the record, surpassing Winston Churchill as the foreign leader who has addressed Congress the most times, because we live in historic moments and because his testimony directly to Congress is so important with regard to what's happening in Israel right now. 120 hostages languish in tunnels deep in the land over there in Gaza built by Hamas. These tunnels have been, and that includes, of course, 8 Americans, and we cannot forget that. Our two nations are united in our common cause to bring the hostages home, and we are united to stand against our common enemies. As Iran and its proxies, including Hezbollah and the Houthis, have become increasingly hostile, they attack Israelis in the north and in Tel Aviv, we have to be clear that Israel is not alone. It has never been more important than it is right now for us to stand with our closest ally in the Middle East and our traditional partner in all these things. And it is outrageous to me and inexcusable that, as the leader mentioned, that Kamala Harris is boycotting this joint session. This is an historic moment. It's an important moment for the country for all the reasons we've said. The gravity of the situation cannot be overstated. And yet, Kamala Harris will abandon her seat. As you all know, as the Vice President and as serving as the President of the Senate, she is supposed to be seated next to me at the rostrum. She will not be there because she refuses to attend. She needs to be held accountable for that, and she needs to be asked very searing questions about why. They went down the roster to find out who else would sit in the seat. Senator Patty Murray declined the opportunity as well. She will also boycott the event, skip the speech. They landed on Senator Cardin, who is retiring from the Senate, so has little political risk. The idea that they are making political calculations when our ally is in such dire straits, fighting for its very survival and fighting back against the horrific attack in October is unconscionable to us. America's relationship with Israel has always been bipartisan, and it should stay that way. With that, I'll take a few of your questions. Yes, sir. Front row.
Mr. Speaker, how did Director Cheatle react when you were faced with her in the library yesterday? And secondly, do you support efforts to impeach her?
She was very stoic, and I would classify it as sort of non-responsive, just as she was in the committee hearing. She seems to almost, in some way, almost be a little bit in shock about the events, and I just find her demeanor and her responses to be inexcusable and obviously inadequate. And so that's why you see, as was noted, the Oversight Committee is rarely united as it has been, Republicans and Democrats together agreeing that this is ridiculous and that she has to go. It's rather unconscionable to us that she's not been removed. One of our colleagues filed a impeachment motion resolution regarding her, and impeachment, as we know, is reserved for treason, bribery, high crimes, and misdemeanors. Maladministration and utter incompetence, unfortunately, are not impeachable offenses. But there are other ways to achieve the desired end. As was noted, we have a resolution to call upon President Biden to do his job and fire her, replace her with someone who can handle the responsibilities. And I'm encouraging members to be considering those options and those alternatives. So we'll see where all that goes. Yeah, Manu.
Mr. Speaker, as Kamala Harris has become the presumptive nominee, some of your colleagues have been criticizing her over the issue of diversity. Tim Burchett said that she was a DEI hire. Is that appropriate?
Listen, this election, as I noted at the outset, is going to be about policies, not personalities. This is not personal with regard to Kamala Harris. And her ethnicity or her gender have nothing to do with this whatsoever. This is about who can deliver for the American people and get us out of the mess that we're in. Every area of public policy is a disaster because the Biden-Harris administration made it that way. And that's what this election is about. I love that we'll have thoughtful debate going forward where the Trump-Vance ticket can present their ideas and our solutions to all this and compare it to the Biden-Harris record. That's the thing about this election cycle. Remember, both of the persons running for president now have a record. They have both served in an administration here within the last several years. So you can compare how you and your family were doing under the first Trump administration and how you and your family are doing now. That's what should be the basis of the decision, and that's why I believe we're going to have a great November. The Republican Party is going to do very well. Yes, in the back.
Speaker Johnson, you laid out the case for the geopolitical reasons why the U.S. should support Israel. But as a man of faith who's been clear about the role that plays in how you approach your job, do you also think that there's a moral or biblical rationale for the U.S. to be supporting Israel at this moment?
Sure, it's my personal belief. It begins in the first book of the Bible, the Torah, in Genesis, where it says very clearly that God will bless the nation that blesses Israel and curse the nation that curses Israel. So whether you look at this as a matter of faith, whether you look at it in purely pragmatic reasons, it's very important for us to support Israel as the only stable democracy in the Middle East and our one of our closest allies, arguably the most strategic ally that we have. If you do not have a stable democracy in that part of the world, it's a tinderbox. So supporting Israel, both economically, geopolitically, for policy reasons, makes all the sense in the world. But for some of us, it goes even deeper than that because it is a matter of faith. So whatever the reason, there is no logical position that would, for any American to say that they would not support Israel, especially at this desperate time. Iran is close to having nuclear capability, if anybody missed that headline over the last couple of weeks. This is serious business, and we have to take it seriously, and the fact that the administration is not even willing to sit on the rostrum to support the prime minister at this time to us is just beyond the pale. Yes?
When you talk about having Ben Cardin come over tomorrow to preside with you over that joint session, and the fact that Vice President Harris has been evidently elevated to being the presumptive Democratic nominee, but talk about the image that sends, especially, and maybe you have a question, and I'd like to hear you on this, what her ability to lead, if she were to be elected president on the national stage, when she's not willing, whether it be scheduling issues or political differences, but to meet with the Prime Minister of Israel on that national stage tomorrow.
I mean, these are very important questions, Chad, and I don't have the answers, but I'll be asking them, and I hope that the press corps will be asking them as well. Madam Vice President, you say you want to be the leader of the free world, and yet you can't bring yourself to sit behind our most important and strategic ally in this moment. That is not a good look for you. It's not a good look for America, and it's not a good look for her party that she aims to lead. So I think those are very important questions. I don't have the answers to those questions. Kamala Harris needs to provide them. How can she be expected to be viewed as the leader if she can't fulfill this basic responsibility? This is her duty. It is your duty as the vice president and the acting president of the Senate to sit in that rostrum and host a foreign leader for their joint session, their address to a joint session. I'm not sure. I haven't checked the history books, but this may be an unprecedented event. The vice president to decline that responsibility. I just think it's outrageous. Scott in the back.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As you correctly noted, the last 48 hours have completely upended the political landscape. Having Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket rather than Joe Biden, how does that change your political calculus or strategy as you're looking to protect your House majority?
It doesn't change it at all because she is the co-owner, co-author, co-conspirator in all the policies that got us into the mess. I just made a list when I was sitting in the back this morning. crises owned by Kamala Harris, co-owned, the border crisis, the inflation crisis, the crime crisis, everything happening with the economy, our national security, weakness on the world stage. She is a equal partner in all of that. So she can't run from it. She has to run on it. And we will ensure that the American people know the facts. There's no way to dress this up. Kamala Harris has a long record in public service, and she cannot point to a single thing. I don't think a single thing that she has done successfully. I saw some man-on-the-street interviews over the last couple of days. People were asking, I'm excited. I support Kamala Harris. Can you name one thing that she's accomplished in her long service in public life? No one could come up with an answer. And I would challenge any of you. What has she done other than make a mess of everything? So we love this. We love that Kamala Harris is at the top of the ticket. I'm looking forward to the debate, and it will be very interesting to see how it all develops. Thank you all so much. Thank you so much.
Can I get your reaction? Director Cheatle is stepping down.
She just resigned?
She just resigned. Can you say how this changes oversight of the assassination attempt now?
Well, she must have been watching our press conference. I'm glad she did the right thing. Look, our reaction, the immediate reaction to her resignation is that it is overdue. She should have done this at least a week ago. I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see that she has heeded the call of both Republicans and Democrats. Now we have to pick up the pieces. We have to rebuild the American people's faith and trust in the Secret Service as an agency. It has an incredibly important responsibility in protecting presidents, former presidents, and other officials in the executive branch, and we've got a lot of work to do. The task force that we'll be putting together is going to be very important. As I said, they have three responsibilities: to investigate what happened, the debacle that happened 2 Saturdays ago, to hold those accountable. It certainly was the director, Cheatle, but there may be others in the line of authority who are also culpable in what happened and the errors and mistakes there. And finally, to ensure that those mistakes do not happen again. The stakes are too high. It's a very dangerous time. We need the Secret Service to be acting to be performing at the top of their game, and we'll ensure that that happens. I hope that the interim director or whomever is appointed to replace Director Cheatle will be very sober-minded about the responsibility and take into account the very dangerous times in which we live. We'll do everything we can in the House to ensure that that's true, and I think our task force's work just got even more important. So we'll give you further comment as this develops. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.